Charlie. I have heard you tell a story about a palliative care physician. Was this Roger Cole?
Yes,
yeah, that's what I thought. Sharing what people are asking themselves at the end of their lives.
Yeah.
Right? So I wondered if we might start there, if you might share a little bit about, because this is what matters most, right? Whatever you think about the rest of the time, at the end of your life, these are the things that matter. So I wonder if you could share about these two questions, and then also about the kinds of wisdom one needs to be able to answer these questions.
Okay, thank you, Judy, and hello to everybody. It's really lovely to be here. I've been here since last Tuesday, and I'm departing early tomorrow morning. I have a friend in Australia who's a fellow meditator, and he's often said to me he's an oncologist, but a palliative care physician also. So he's spent 20 years with people who are about to pass on. And he's often said to me that when people are about to die, there's two questions on their minds. Firstly, what sort of person was I? Which is like an evaluation of me, how I performed in my life. And secondly, how did I treat other people? So in a sense, not an evaluation about others, but really an evaluation about myself. And I find it really fascinating because when we're alive, we're just so engrossed in so many things. But when we face death, all this superficial goes, and what's really important comes to me. And fundamentally, what's most important is that sense of who I was. How did I live my life? What sort of person was I? And I feel it's something that's really helped me when I've heard that, because I think we have responsibilities, we have many things we have to do, but if I keep that major question in the front of my mind, what sort of person am I? And so like a self-evaluation.
So is that what benevolence is? Does benevolence tie to those two questions? How I treated others and all, these notions of benevolence?
Definitely the second one. I think that because, when people die, I remember one woman, she was about to pass on, and I went to see her. And I don't know why, how sometimes things just pop in your mind. And I just said to her, Lynn, she was a mother of a friend of mine, Lynn, is there any regrets? And instantly a tear just went pop, just as soon as I said that. And I think, and she told me she had a lot of regrets about her relationship with her mother. But I do think that, at that time, we often regret a lot of the things we didn't do that we could have done. Mm. And I think that's often a big reason why we feel guilty, not even what we have done, but what we haven't done.
What we wished we'd made time for.
What we wish we'd made time for. So I feel the beauty of life is to give. And, the law of life says if you give love, you receive it. If you give respect, you will receive it. If you give cooperation, a lot of people wait around for others to give that to me. But my observation of happy people are their givers. They're always giving of themselves. And I don't mean physically, materially. I mean giving that love, support, cooperation. Life means that you'll receive it. Not maybe 100%, but 90% of the time.
You're reminding me, some of you would have met Anne DeMarle over these last few days. And Anne lost her wonderful husband, Jim, 3 years ago. And she did this project at the end of his life where she had met a number of people, not too many because he didn't have much strength, ask him questions on Zoom, and he reflected on these questions. And one of the questions I asked him was a moment, kind of the best moment in that time when he was preparing to go. He didn't miss a beat. He said, I know when it was. He said, I had volunteered for something called adaptive skiing. This was in Burlington, Vermont, which was a program where they helped people with physical disabilities to ski. And he still had enough strength at that point, so he was volunteering, and he went over one day to show up and see if they had anyone for him. And a woman had come, and she couldn't walk. She had kind of limited physical motion, but she wanted to ski. So he said to her, well, either I can strap you to me, or you can just hold on to that pole and I'll hold on to you and we'll go down together. And she said, oh, let's do that. So he said she held on, and somehow he had her embraced. And the whole way down the mountain, she's squealing with delight. And that was the moment he remembered the most. So to your point, the moment of giving, the moment of generosity, the moment of kindness, the moment, right? It's interesting, isn't it? Does one have to be a little bit wise to do those things? I mean, what's required for someone to make that choice?
I think it is definitely a state of wisdom, but I think that I feel giving is like a natural state. And if you reflect, everyone sitting here, when you feel happy about yourself, you're often when you're giving, supporting, cooperating, and so on. But sometimes in life, the nature of the mind is because we feel empty, we are always trying to fill the emptiness. And so the natural state to give, which is the definite step to happiness, is forgotten. And I think it's a state of wisdom to understand, even if I feel empty, if I keep giving, actually it's the giving, because people give you blessings from their heart. So we all know that feeling that when you're kind or you're loving, they may not say a word, but their eyes radiate love, appreciation, their face. Those are precious moments, aren't they? They're sort of like blessings which fill your heart with lovely feelings.
So can I drill down a little bit on something you just said? So you just talked about sometimes there's a kind of emptiness and people try to fill that up. And I heard you a few days ago suggest that there is a hierarchy of selves. Can you explain this, how people try to fill themselves up in connection with this hierarchy of selves?
Well, I would say that the state of the soul, the state of the self today is emptiness. And often the motivation in life is to fill that void, that emptiness. When you're on your own a lot of the time and an emptiness comes, it's a very sort of uncomfortable feeling.
Right.
So I was just talking about different identities we have. One is the doing self. And because that emptiness is so uncomfortable, we would just run around, because if we stop, that void, that emptiness, which is in a sense is depression, just
that's what I was going to ask you.
Takes me over.
With emptiness, you're sort of talking about the verge of depression. Is that right? Yeah.
That's right. And it's uncomfortable. So just do, rush, run. And it's not that you solve it, but you keep it at bay temporarily. So the doing self is the self that does an action to get a temporary reward, maybe love, maybe praise, maybe respect, maybe material things. But the problem is the emptiness comes back again. So I get in this cycle of doing that gives me this temporary hits of happiness. And then there's like a having self, which is the material or object related self that sort of finds possessions, but I become those sort of things. I am a house, I am a car, And if something happens to them or they're not there, I feel empty once again. They're all sort of temporary methodologies to fill up the emptiness.
Are we aware of that? I mean, when we're doing it, like if I'm keeping myself very busy, am I aware it has to do with the emptiness, or probably not?
I don't think so.
No. Okay.
I don't think so. I remember once, some of you know Daddy Janki, who was the head of the Brahma Kumaris at one point, and we were having a call of time actually in Oxford in the UK. And one of the guests said, Daddy was talking about giving time for meditation. And he said, oh, Daddy, it's such a lovely idea, but I'm too busy. And you know what Daddy Janki's response was? Busyness is for lazy people. Which is a pretty interesting idea.
That's an interesting response.
And
Quite counterintuitive.
What she was meaning was that we're lazy in really learning about the self and really understanding deeply about life and who I am and what fills me and what empties me.
Are we a little afraid? Is it a kind of fear or just a not knowing?
I think it's mainly not knowing. We're in this cycle of doing.
Right.
And if we stop, the void keeps coming back. So and I convince myself I'm an important and busy person. But actually, I think it's mainly a strategy to keep the uncomfortable feelings.
Okay, I have another one. Is there such a thing as the responsible self?
Yes, there's a
I'm
responsible
asking this
self.
because I think for a long time, I was the eldest child. Some of us just have that responsibility gene. We feel we have to take care of everyone. You know that? Does anyone understand what I'm talking about? Yeah. So is that similar or is that different?
No, it's the same sort of thing. I think though, maybe the effect is slightly different, that some of us are so responsible. It's a good quality in one way, but we become extremely burdened.
Right.
I have to do. I have to fix. When there's an issue for anyone I know, I'm the one that has to sort it out.
So if they're all going for a picnic, no problem, I'll stay here. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's many types of self. There's even what I call the old self, when I really identify with what has happened to me. And this is the self that is caught up in thinking, what's happened to me, how people have treated me, what people have said to me, what people have done to me, and even what I've done to other people and this sort of thing. And it's a huge story that goes around inside my head constantly. And even once I was running a workshop and someone said that some believe, there's statistics, but something like 70% of our thinking is around the past, going over and over and over again.
All right, let's do a little survey. How many believe that in your mind you tend to go to the past? Just curious. Stories of the past. Could be good. Some of them could be good stories, right? Okay. How many of you tend to go to the future? Most. That's not a 70-30 split, right? Let's try again. How many of you tend to go to the past? Let's see. Bigger number. Future? I think we have to change the statistical basis, Charlie. I think it looks more like 40-60. But what's interesting is neither of those is in the present, right? And that's kind of what you're proposing, is that the mind tends to, is that what you're saying? The mind tends to attach itself to something other than this moment? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the mind is, caught up in the whole story of the past, and I invest my identity in that story. That's what people have done to me. That's how people have treated me.
Okay, so
and
it's
I
mostly
feel that
negative,
as
you're
much
saying.
as we go into the past,
Regrets.
we go into the future anxious about the future. Both are
Okay.
related to each other.
All right.
Not my regrets as well as anger and hurt is the way that people
But
are.
what about nostalgia? Is that okay? The good old days? Is that all right?
Nostalgia is okay if it doesn't bring sadness.
Okay, so see, you can do this. You can go to the past, just don't get sad, right? Okay. And you can go to the future, but just don't get worried, right? So, Charlie, what is or who is the benevolent self?
The way I look at the self these days is to really discover the benevolent self. I really have to know my permanent self and my original self. And what's helped me really understand my inner world is that I see three distinct personalities. I would say two of them create that emptiness, the void, the unhappiness, but one of them really takes me into the giving mode, the generosity mode, the benevolence mode. And that first personality I call the I of arrogance or the I of superiority. And this personality takes its whole sense of identity from my temporary body. So I compare with others and I think I am better, I know more, I am right. But when it comes into my feelings, when my ego is dominating my inner world, that's when I feel so easily insulted, disrespected, not valued, excluded, sensitive, all those sort of emotions. And whenever I'm feeling those feelings, I think, know that the seed of my identity is false. I'm under the influence of a temporary identity of my body or my ego. But often I see that personality as a front for the dominant personality in life today, which is the vulnerable me, the one, the lack of self-respect, the ego of inferiority.
Okay.
The one that compares with others and thinks, others are better, others know more, others are right, others don't love, value me, respect me. And when it sort of feels my feelings,
Right.
a hopelessness, I feel there's just an epidemic of hopelessness in the world, inadequate feelings of vulnerability, depression, I would say depression. And what happens most of the time, because these two personalities based on a bodily identity make me really fluctuate. But really the way into the benevolent self is to know and experience who I am. And all of you know when you come to the Brahma Kumaris that it's where we always start, because the original self, the soul, I've been a BK now for 48 years and I'm still fascinated with the idea of who I am, that the soul sits in the front of the brain around the pituitary gland. But the soul exists, but it has no size. In mathematics, it's defined as a point. It's so subtle. And yet that is me. That's the whole me. But I sit on the throne and I express through the sense organs. When I leave this throne, I call it a dead body. But actually, when I start to become soul conscious, almost automatically, I start to fill with my natural state of peace. I start to fill with a self-respect. And as much as I have self-respect, I can give love. And so I start to re-emerge my giving self and my benevolent self. I would say it's not that you have to think about it. It's a natural consequence of self-realization.
Okay, so I have a question for you. So what if someone close to us, someone we really care about, has that sense of low self-respect you described? Can we do something to help them not have that feeling? I mean, I know you can't just say, oh, you're so good, right? You're really good, don't lose faith. That doesn't really help, does it? What can we do?
One of the things I feel, which we were chatting about this morning or last night, one way that we can help, ultimately somebody has to do the work to understand their original self, to take back their self-respect. But there's two types of support I find. One is emotional support. That's support where you really try to help the people you love by encouraging them, just what you were saying, Judy. But spiritual support is really when you know their value. They can't see their own value. They're seeing only what's wrong with them. But you decide to tune into their value. And that vision, people feel your vibration,
even
your
if I don't
vision.
say anything.
Yep. I mean, I've heard people say they've met some of the, really evolved spiritual people, and just because their vision is loving and the vision is towards the good, they feel uplifted. Now, it will still be temporary because that old self will come back, but it can help. But in the long term, automatically, by becoming soul-conscious, self-aware, I start to take back the authority of the self and rebuild my self-value. Sometimes I think the whole spiritual journey is this journey of rebuilding my sense of self and my sense of self-value, that no matter what happens out there, I don't dance to the tune of people, opinions, life, behaviors, situations. I'm not the roller coaster just reacting to life.
Okay. And if I see someone else on that roller coaster, someone I love, I just hold that vision of respect for them. I don't try to talk them off the roller coaster. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, you can, but I would say, well, I can give you a temporary, I love you, and, you can give them that pep talk, the
Right.
pep talk.
A little pep talk.
But-
It doesn't do much, though, the pep talk, does it? Really? Has anyone
the
tried the
real-
pep talk? It doesn't help that much.
The real love, I would say, is to offer them the understanding of who they are
Okay.
and give them an opportunity to use the tools of self-awareness, because that's a permanent solution.
Okay.
Even the emotional support, spiritual support, they're like temporary solutions.
Okay. Okay, so you're talking about this benevolent self, right? Natural. You're saying it's natural. So we're naturally loving, we're naturally kind, right? It's our nature. But what do we do when we see others behaving really badly? They're greedy, they're selfish, they're unkind, they're mean-spirited, or worse. And now I'm having trouble finding my benevolent self. My benevolent self has gone underground, and now I'm really angry, or I'm really offended, or I'm really, enraged, or whatever. So how do I recover my benevolent self when something like that triggers me?
Well, first thing to say, it's not easy because our programming, because we're empty, and sometimes I think there's an analogy that the mind is like a vacuum cleaner. We're empty. So if you give me love, if you give me respect, if you give me cooperation, I take in that. But if you insult me, I take that. If you criticize, I take everything. And if it's negative, I blame you. I put all the responsibility on the other. And I feel one is I need to know who I am, but I also need to know how to protect myself, in a sense that, by meaning that the reason people affect me is because I've made myself so vulnerable. I'm empty and I'm absorbing. And really, I think one of the great things of, I can only really maintain genuine benevolence when I'm unaffected by you. If you affect me, sometimes I may be good, sometimes I'm going through ups and downs.
So you're saying that I should choose not to take that whatever I just saw inside. That's basically what you're saying.
Absolutely.
So I see it, and I'm probably kind of offended. I mean, I don't know where you stop there. So I see it, I'm offended, I'm kind of disappointed. Where does this stop? I stop right there? I'm offended, but I don't take it in? What do I do exactly? I need a little bit more detail here.
I would stop before I get offended.
Don't get offended.
Yeah.
All right.
Because what takes offense is my ego. I began to realize some years ago, only my ego takes sorrow. When my
But what
ego
if they
self,
didn't say anything rude to me? What if they're being rude to someone else? Is that still my ego? My ego? If they're
If you're
being awful
taking-
to somebody else?
if you're taking sorrow from it, it's your ego.
My ego. What if it's my protective nature, my friendship of that person? No?
But, you will see what's happening.
Yeah.
And it's not right, but if you're
Right.
getting upset by it, disturbed, because, one of the great, I think, lessons of spirituality is to become a detached observer. And, often people don't like that because the word detachment conjures
Can't you
up.
give us another word? That's not very nice. Detached. It's not that nice word. Can you give us another one?
I can't.
Oh, come on. How about benevolent observer?
Yep.
All right, that's
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm a benevolent observer, and now when my friend is getting insulted, I'm not upset because
Yeah. Honestly, if I get upset about anything, ultimately it's about me. Now, I mightn't get upset, but I will try to heal the thing. I'll try to resolve the thing. I'll try to support my friend. I'll do everything. But why should I get upset? Because actually it's not about me. Because
Well,
we are
it's about my
just so
friend.
addicted to taking sorrow from all situations.
Right. All right, so let's say I managed to not be upset in the moment. I didn't say anything rude. I held on to my inner state. The offending person walks away. Now I say to my friend, can you believe what they did to you? I hate that person. Do I do that? What do I do afterwards?
I think sometimes demonstrating non-reaction is a really great
So
example.
I don't bring it up with them. I just say, let's go get an ice cream.
Yeah,
Or
no,
something.
you can say, are you okay?
Okay.
I wouldn't take it to heart. Because,
Okay.
we just we're programmed often to take sorrow from almost every incident in life.
You've got a thought, don't you? You'd have to get a microphone so we can hear your thought. Because this is a very difficult thing he's proposing here. Brother Renaud, we need the...
Hello, Kani.
Okay.
Hi.
Will you say your name first?
Yeah, my name is Nilesh, and this is my wife, Veena.
Veena,
yeah,
Nilesh, nice to meet you.
Yeah, first time we came here, and thanks for your thoughts. We came from New Jersey, actually.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Welcome.
thank you. So, based upon the discussions, seems like one person is offending others, and you are just watching. So I'm
Right,
just thinking
you're
that
watching.
might be, instead of you getting into the problem, I'm thinking maybe
Right.
that's an opportunity to practice.
Right.
Um,
You're saying what
What you-
Charlie's saying is right.
yeah, when we
I
go
should get
into
my
the,
act together here.
yeah, when we go into the real life, go
Right.
on, and then I feel that might be an opportunity to practice and treat differently that situation, and
Very
probably that might be some creative things might come up.
Have you had this happen? Have you had someone close to you be upset? Like that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but our tendency is to get involved and
Okay.
go with the flow with those two people, and that's a natural tendency. But I try to keep myself like on top of the roof and watch them, not on
Detached
the
observer, like he said.
same. Yeah,
huh?
detached to the ground and stay our soul or something on the top of the room, or if you are in conference room, stay on the near camera or somewhere, and then.
Position yourself above it all.
Yeah,
this
so you
time.
have different perspective basically. So that's what I'm thinking.
Very nice.
What's your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Charlie?
Yes, I feel that's real wisdom, because often, I feel we have a PhD in taking sorrow from others. We're experts at it, and then my head is just full of all this hurt. And what I was going to say earlier was that I think when we invest time in knowing who I am, realizing who I am, experiencing the reality of life as a soul, becoming uninfluenced, if I can say, becomes a natural consequence when you're soul conscious. And the more I'm empty, the more I absorb. But the more I'm full, the more I give. The more I give, the less I take sorrow, take disrespect, take hurt, take all this stuff, which is, as I said, I think it's an addiction. And if I reflect on my own journey personally, that, like all of us, I was quite a sensitive person. You know how just a little word or something can really, put a spear in the heart or something like that. But as I've practiced meditation, honestly, it's been a huge change for me. you're aware of things, but I don't overreact to things. I don't feel affected by people. And I think the more you just remain stable, actually, that sort of vibration cools an atmosphere, changes an atmosphere almost automatically. Like you demonstrate a behavior, not to overreact and not to...
Right. So how do you fill yourself up? You talking about not being empty and filling yourself up. How do we do that?
Well, the whole of the spiritual journey is filling the self up. And the first step is this step of realizing the self as a soul. And that's really a lifelong learning where I just don't believe I'm a soul. Sometimes I think, the first step is to know, the second step is to believe. The next 998 steps are educating myself how to feel the reality of the self, and peace becomes a natural consequence. But when I'm soul conscious, we have a union of the mind with the divine, with God. And in a sense, I'm plugging into a source that's overflowing with qualities that I need to fill myself. It's like a one-stop shop. And so just, in a sense, when I meditate, I withdraw from the consciousness of my temporary identity. I become the soul. I look through the eye of the mind, the third eye. I see God, the form of light. And it's almost like I fill with an unlimited feeling of peace, love, power, happiness. I just live stream that energy inside of myself.
Do you mean see like visually? It's an experience, a visual experience?
Sometimes when you start to meditate, to visualize the form is good, but I don't often do that. I just remember.
It's more feeling.
Yeah, remember. But it's like a source which fills me with all the resources I need. And I honestly find, and I share this a lot, some who here know me, that when I sit to meditate and I allow myself to be loved, I feel so full inside, and I just feel this incredible, and I like the word just settling down. When you just settle down, and it's like you need nothing. You need nothing, you have. I often feel the first need in life is love, and when that's fulfilled, you don't have, your desires stop. But if you don't taste quality love, desires just keep coming, material desires for recognition, respect. So many things happen when there's a lack of true love inside.
So a lot of the different things you're describing are coming from what you're calling emptiness.
Yeah, I think so.
That we have kind of a lot of emptiness in the world, right? A lot of people feel empty inside. And so they're looking for something. They're looking to be completed or filled, or that's what you're saying, right?
Well, the formula for life today is really do an action to get a feeling. Hopefully you do the action, you get a little bit of peace or love. But the formula for spirituality is fill with peace and love through self-knowledge and knowledge of God, and then come into action. And so when you come into action and someone loves you, you think, great. But if they don't love you, you think, what can I do? But I'm not going to really get disturbed by it because it's the nature of life.
So you don't want anything from them.
You don't want anything, no. Now, I might be talking about a high bar here, but...
I think he is talking about a high bar, don't you think?
But it's absolutely achievable. And even when we move slightly in that direction, because I feel I am responsible for how I feel. We want to pass the responsibility of everything in life to other people and situations. They're responsible, but they're not. And spirituality says I'm fully responsible for how I feel. And actually that's empowering, because when I have their honesty to accept that, then I do something about it.
Right, okay.
And I don't keep projecting in all the different directions.
Okay. You have said this is an age of benevolence. There seems to be a lot of evidence to the contrary. Would you say? There's a lot of things going on in the world that are not benevolent. So how can we look at the world as it is now hard drugs in our towns and whatever, and see it as an age of benevolence?
I think probably it depends on the eyes I look through. And if I look through my physical eyes, we can see that so much of our world is going in the wrong direction on almost every sphere of life. But we know all systems really reach a climax or old age, and some newness comes, or new birth in a sense, you know, winter becomes spring, etc. So if I look through the third eye, the eye of the soul, and it seems to me that an old system based on body consciousness is really dying, because it's a self-imploding system. It's sort of ego-based system. It doesn't satisfy any of us. And so many people, I think, around the world are really going back to the roots of who I am, who I belong to in terms of God, and re-establishing a true spiritual foundation. And that means that I, in a sense, step back into my benevolent self, because it's helping us shift back to, I would say, a more of our original culture, which is to be soul-conscious, self-aware, and naturally loving and benevolent.
So are you saying I have to look with a spiritual lens instead of a physical lens to see this age of benevolence? Is that
I think
what you're saying?
I think so, because, I mean, we can all see what's happening in the world. It's not pleasant, but, you know, I think that this growing feeling of spirituality is a palpable, people are really, that's the only solution really to most of the ills that we're watching in the world.
Now,
at the
when you
moment.
talk about spirituality, you're talking about sort of a deep, what is it, love of humanity also, right? A deep wanting to give and help. I'm thinking about our community pharmacy that our good friend Ed runs, and he has a jar by the cash register. Ed, I want them to know who you are. So this is Ed. He's our close friend. He's started the first community pharmacy in the country, right? Nonprofit community pharmacy in the country. And so right out of the gate, there was a jar by the cash register. If you wanted to contribute to the fund to support people in the community, you could do it there. And then there's a big anti-addiction program on the mountain that I know the pharmacy supports. So those kinds of impulses would suggest that you're right? That there is an age of benevolence here. So on the one hand, you have all the addiction, and on the other hand, you have the people trying to help with all of that. So you've got two of those things going on, right? And are you suggesting that the benevolence is sort of the more important, the more powerful, the more dominant, the more promising, the more what? Why should we believe that this is our future?
Well, I think benevolence is innate in all of us. No matter how angry, hurt, and negative we may be, our programming is when we are supporting others, helping others, it feels right, and you feel like you're in the right space. If we look at the world, as I was saying, I mean, there's just so many issues. Often we just shut down because there's so many. But I think, on the other hand, the reaction to that is to go much deeper, to reconnect with my benevolent self. And when many of us make that decision in life, I really want to help, I really want to support, then I think this growing feeling. And, in a country like this country, I know in Australia, 20% do volunteer work. People love to be benevolent. But let's
do a little survey. How many in this room do some kind of volunteer work somewhere? See, big number. That's
Huge
way more
number.
than 20%. That's
Well,
like 80%.
this is a special group of people here.
Well, that may be true. This isn't the general
It's not a
public.
sample of it.
All right, fair enough. All right, so that's what you're saying, is that the impulse to be generous, the impulse to be kind, and all of that. Charlie, one thing that gets in the way of having a benevolent state of mind can be our memories. How do I somehow manage not to be pulled by my memories? What do I do to not have that dominate the mind? We talked a little bit earlier about the mind wanting to go to the past, right? And sometimes there's something in the memory that just pulls us. I mean, it touches us. What do we do about that? How do we keep from being kind of overwhelmed by our memories?
Just before we maybe get to that, I think in relationships, the powerful communication is feelings. As soon as you meet someone, you tune into their feelings. And when we meet somebody and our memories of that, my interaction, my history with you come up into the conscious mind. And it's like a filter I see you through. So if my recent memories aren't that good, it's like a mixed vibration. I get a little bit of a mixed feeling from me. And it's like I carry my story in my memory track. We all do, and we've all been doing this. But I think that when I start to become more soul conscious, I look with a much more compassionate vision. All of us are under the influence of our old stuff. Every one of us is dancing to the tune of these subconscious habits that make me feel hurt and upset. And so when I see the soul and I have compassionate feelings, I think that, we step aside from the memories and the vibrations associated with that, and I can really see the other. Like me, I'm under the influence. I've had my stuff in my life. You're the same as me. So I offer compassion rather than judgment and, hurt based on past memories. All of this, I think, for me, can be done when I have the spiritual power from a relationship with God. Because otherwise, we do fall under the influence of our own nature. And I feel when you're in touch with a benevolent being, you want to be benevolent too. And I always, if you're down, if you've ever noticed when you're really not feeling that good, and you do something for others, it's amazing how you feel better. Many times I've talked to people in this community, if they're sort of not so feeling so good, that when they teach meditation or something to others, you automatically step back into a benevolence brings out my value, and I stop focusing on what's wrong with me and with my life situation and other people. And once I remember in Sydney, there was a World Psychiatry Conference at the Sydney Opera House, and one psychiatrist presented a paper that the most emotionally and mentally, spiritually balanced people in the world were the Mother Teresas of the world. When we give and we have a life, I would say it's the most fulfilling life. If you spend your whole life earning to, you can feel you have everything on one level, but you're not fulfilled, you're not content, you're not satisfied as a person. And you and I, observing, we were talking about someone like Daddy Yankee, who at every moment of her life, she was giving. And as you saw, she reached 104. She was so ill sometimes, but what made her strong again was to put her in front of people and start to give, and all her strength came back. Because I think it's recorded, it's a sort of a part of our human nature to want to help, support, give.
Is it a kind of aspect of karma? I mean, is it that what goes out comes back, or is it different than that?
100%. It's 100% because, if you give love and respect, you get the blessings from the hearts of others. And that's an incredibly valuable thing. I feel it's so precious, those sweet feelings from the hearts of other people. And when you do good actions and you're loving and respectful, 90% of the time that energy will come your way. And you feel it keeps you motivated. It keeps you motivated, the blessings from the minds and hearts of those we love. There's a question.
Yes. You need a microphone. Would you say your name when you ask a question?
Yeah, my name is Angelina.
Angelina.
I have a question for you. So, I've experienced this, so I've kind of figured out my own way to deal with it, but I want to ask you how you would deal with if you're giving and people start to take advantage of that. How would you react, or what would you do in that situation, or how would you feel in that situation?
So you're giving and giving and giving, and they're taking and taking and taking.
Yeah.
Charlie?
Well, I suppose it really depends on the context of that. If people are taking benefit from your giving, are you talking about it spiritually or material or your time or
all of the above, right?
Well, I think it's okay, but if for some reason, if people do take advantage, you can put boundaries around, how much time and energy you give to a particular person. So we have to become skilled at sort of seeing the needs of people and how much time and energy and investment I put for a certain person. But, if it's helping them and they're taking support and it's not really draining you, because sometimes we give from a place of need ourselves. When we give, it sort of fills me up, temporarily, but I get very drained by my giving. Spiritually, when you're taking from God, you feel full, more full by giving. But if we feel exhausted, like sometimes, I remember in Australia, one nurse said to me, she's given up nursing because I have compassion burnout. It was the first time I'd heard of that. She just couldn't, because I feel I have to do, I'm giving, I'm the one supporting. Whereas I think spiritually, we just feel we're more instrumental. And so the more I give, actually, the more full I feel internally. But if you feel someone is taking advantage, I think we have to put boundaries around it. We have to sort of say, well, how much I'm prepared to do. Because maybe if they keep giving and they're not taking responsibility for caring themselves, maybe I can help them understand what they need to do to help themselves rather than just relying on somebody else.
Could that be creating a sense of dependency then?
It can
Someone
be.
can become dependent on you and you don't want that, right? Yeah. Complicated. Would that make you selfish if you then put a boundary? Is that what you're saying? If you said, okay, look, I can be available an hour a week or...
Yeah.
Right, some kind of a boundary, right? Is that a selfish thing to
Yeah, is
to
it
do
selfish to set that boundary?
set a boundary?
When they've been so dependent on you?
I don't think it's selfish, because you have to look after yourself. And in a way, if they're not learning to stand on their own 2 feet or take some responsibility, then it's just going to go on forever. So it's not selfish. I don't think it's selfish. But, I think if I really feel that I'm instrumental in supporting them, I'm taking that from God, then I think you can remain light. I feel that some people today are struggling so deeply. We all know people feel so vulnerable and so empty. And we can look on one level and be extremely judgmental They just, but if we look really from the soul level, we can really feel compassion. Once again, if you don't allow their behavior to influence you, why are they behaving like that? Why are they sometimes difficult? Even when you help them, they're still rude to you. Yeah. You think, goodness gracious, what's this about?
I feel like
a lot of us will take offense, but some people are really deeply vulnerable at this time. We have to be very compassionate. Yeah. But at the same time, I have to look after myself too. And if I drain myself, that's not going to help me, or I won't have much to give to them as well.
Okay, we've got another question. I just want to ask one more question. I wondered if Colleen and Natasha could come up. I have a child question, and we only have one child to answer it. No pressure, though, if she's feeling shy. Would you rather not come up? I don't blame you. Let me tell you the question at a distance. You whisper it to your mom. What can we do to help our children remain innocent and benevolent in difficult times? What can the mom do? Or what can the dad do? Any opinion from the back of the room? We're going to think about it. All right, no problem. Just let us know when you've got an answer. Brother Jagdish.
Brother, you have been referring the word soul consciousness in your talk number of times, and you said, I take power from the God and give it. So what is that soul consciousness state? How to get it for an ordinary person doing all the household things, and how to connect to receive those powers?
Well, I think, soul consciousness is really a spiritual practice to really know who I am and live in a self-aware and soul-conscious state. Because if you ask most people, I think 80% or so believe we're something more than a body. But soul consciousness is living in the awareness of who I am, because the natural state of the self is peace. So when I live in the awareness of who I am, I don't have to try to be peaceful. It's a natural consequence of that. And this is what we really learn here, is to learn about the self and practice from morning till night, put in a daily practice. As I go about my chores, as I interact with the family, I'm practicing who I am, and I'm seeing others as souls too. And I find that the more we start to practice, it's incredible, all the benefits that come when I fundamentally reprogram my sense of self-identity. The numerous benefits for me, for my relationships, for my life experience is enormous, but it's a practice. And this is the spiritual journey. It's self-realization. It's like, as I go about all the responsibilities in my life, my fundamental focus is to know and experience who I am. And I've done many experiments in the laboratory of my mind over, the last nearly 50 years. I'm always experimenting, not just chanting, I'm a soul, but what's the feeling? What's the feeling of being non-physical? What's the feeling of being always existing, eternal? What's the feeling of being immortal? I can't die. And really, when you feel it, empowers you back to your original self. But this is the real spiritual life to practice. And the beauty is, I will finish in a sec, the more you're soul conscious, you feel closer to God. God is eternally in the soul state. The more I move on to the soul state, I'm resonating on a similar vibration and frequency. And that relationship is the foundation of taking back my self-respect and my spiritual power in life.
Any other question for Charlie? Yes, 2 in the back.
Hello.
Can you say your name first?
Yes, my name is Neha. Thank you for
Sneha.
the great conversation. So I have been listening, and few thoughts that come into my mind is, as human being, we try to understand, as you just mentioned, like why someone is behaving like that with me or with someone that I love. But sometimes it's only you who is trying to understand, not the other person. And that can lead you to a place that reminds me of a story that most of us might have heard of, the boiling frog in the frog in the
That's
boiling water,
right.
right? And it's like, okay, you're listening, you're understanding, because that's how you have
Does
grown up.
everyone know the story of the boiled frog? Does everyone know this story? I think the basic idea is if you have boiling water and you throw the frog into the boiling water, it's a little violent, but he will jump out. But if you put the frog in cold water and you slowly raise the heat, he won't notice, and that will be the end of the frog, right?
Until he notices, right?
Until he notices.
So it becomes
All right.
very late, right? So
All
in the
right,
same
so carry
manner,
on.
in the same manner, we humans, when we try to either keep giving, because that helps us, like it gives us internal peace, like I could be able to help someone, or in other aspect, like, I'm trying to understand why someone else is doing this with me. It's like you are getting drained slowly.
So Sneha, you're saying I don't notice how tired I'm getting for a long time. Is
Unless
that
you
what
are
you're
really
saying?
tired, or
Yeah.
unless you have given everything that you had, right?
Okay.
And then it becomes very difficult to then keep yourself benevolent and understand, like, why did thing happen to me?
Right.
And then the answer also, because you were giving, and you can't give something that you don't have it, right? Like, unless I don't have something, I can't give that way.
Right.
So how can someone, and I know it might be mixing a couple of things around, but they all have some kind of commonality between them. So how as humans we can understand that point before we reach that heating point that we can't survive,
So
or
how
know that,
do
oh,
we-
this is a point, I can only give this, because initially when you start giving, then it becomes difficult to create that boundary, because then people
Okay.
start feeling a lot of
So we've
stuff.
got a very interesting situation here, Charlie. On the one hand, you're saying we have to keep taking from God and keep being full, and then we can just give forever, I guess you're saying, forever. And on the other hand, we have the situation where I'm giving and giving and giving, but I'm getting empty. I may not even notice how empty I'm getting. So, what do we do to move from the place that I'm giving and getting tired, giving and getting tired, to move to the place where I'm always full? How do I make that shift? Is that fair twist on your question?
Kind of, yes.
A kind of a fair shift. All right, let's give him a chance, and then there's
Sure,
one more
and just
question
a
in the back.
follow-up thing,
Yeah,
which
uh-huh.
I had, but I think it just slipped. Okay, I'll get back.
Are you sure?
I'll get back once I remember it.
All right. So I did restate she found it, she remembered it. Go back.
So another thing, just a separate part on the similar question, is like if someone is purposely trying to prick you, right? Like
Prick
they
you,
know you are
exactly.
trying to be very good and calm and understanding them.
Right.
And trying to be very logical, very practical, and
Right.
not getting yourself like, feel bad. But they are forcing you to get, or like triggering you, or they're trying to different ways.
Their intention isn't
Intention,
good.
yes.
Right.
Then how do you tackle with these people?
Right. What do you do
And you
about
can't
those
get away
people?
from them. You can't get away from them.
Right. They've got bad intention, Charlie.
It's a big sigh, wasn't it? The reality of relationships today, in all our centers around the world, the Brahma Kumaris have nearly 40,000 centers around the world. The main question, how to deal with difficult people, how to manage. And there's a whole lot of methodologies that help. But fundamentally, like I was saying, ultimately in the truth of life, I'm responsible for how I feel. And ultimately, if I keep absorbing from other people, I can keep putting it back on them. And there's no doubt people are rude, difficult, everything. But ultimately, what am I going to do? I have to take full responsibility to look after my feelings. And that's when I put myself in that spiritual world where I give time to understand and become soul conscious, have a link with God, it's like I'm building up my spiritual power, not to keep absorbing and keep being affected. There's so many numerous types of people with so many needs that affect us. And I know it sounds very sort of philosophical, but the more you take your power back, the less, not just people, atmospheres, situations, the state of the world impinges on who you are as a person. And that's why really that's our main message here. It's what I have to do for myself, because it's really, I've put myself under the influence of other people in that way. Now I know it's a long journey, but that's why if we begin to start more with our spiritual practice, then all these things in human relationships, and when we start to really love people, even the difficult people, honestly, our sense of self-respect grows tremendously. That we feel, what is my part? I love God, and I'm going to give that love and respect to people. Of course, you need that spiritual power, but that's a really beautiful life if we can do that. And when I feel I'm giving, we will get drained. And that's why so many of us today feel absolutely exhausted. Because when I say I have my whole sense of me and my personality and my bodily image. But when I say I, the soul, and even I feel an instrument of God, it's not that you get drained, you actually feel full. The more you give, you get the blessings, you actually fill up. And so you can keep going with that method. Do you think I'm too idealistic?
He's pretty idealistic. I know him pretty well. He's pretty idealistic, I'll tell you.
Before we begin to meditate, can I just offer a suggestion, if you feel comfortable, to keep your eyes open and rest your vision to the image of light in front, just naturally. And I'm going to suggest a few thoughts if you just would like to follow the thoughts suggested. Let me relax. Just consciously feel yourself becoming easy. Meditation is the inner journey to reconnect with the eternal self. Just visualize yourself as the soul, the consciousness, a tiny, minute spark of life energy. That sits lightly in the forehead. I, the eternal self, take on my body and play my part. But my body is temporary, and I will continue after this body. Feel yourself gently, gently stepping away from identifying with all the labels your body represents. Your gender, your age, your color, your religion, and just feel yourself moving to this sweet place internally of experiencing who I am. I am a peaceful soul. Just allow the sacred space of your mind to feel this deep peace. Go deeper and deeper. And in this state of soul consciousness, I'm ready to connect with the divine, with God. Yoga is a union of I, the soul, with the one relationship that's permanent. Visualize the form of God as a radiant jewel of light. The Supreme Soul. I turn my mind away from the past, the concerns of the future, the challenges of relationships, and I rest my mind in an ocean of love, an ocean of purity, an ocean of peace. This union is the highest union I can experience. All I have to do is connect. And as I connect, I'm influenced by the vibrations of God. Feel the purity of this love, a love that accepts me, a love that sees my beauty, a love that wants nothing, a love with no agenda. Just allow yourself to feel loved. Just feel the light of this love entering I, the soul. Just feel it healing me. Nothing can heal me like this purity of love. The more I rest my mind in this divine connection, I fill up automatically. And my sense of self begins to change. I begin to value who I am. This love releases my sense of self-value. And the more I fill up, the more I have to give. It's not a giving to impress, a giving out of duty, a giving because I have to. It's an expression of who I am. It's a natural expression of this love I feel. And in this state I see my human family struggling. For most, life is extremely challenging. And I begin to wear the vision of compassion, suspend my judgment. I see them as souls and offer mercy rather than judgment. The more I step into this place, the more I feel comfortable with who I am. We are living at a time where the only way to manage life is to empower myself. And the way to empower myself is to live in the awareness of who I am. Not just when I meditate, but throughout the day. I'm on this journey of self-realization. And I have my companion with me, my beloved, the Supreme. The more I take my power back, the more I have to give. The most beautiful life is to feel close to God, and in a basis, in a natural way, I give to all those around me. If each morning I wake, and before I think about yesterday and what happened, what I have to do and what might happen, just sit quietly, become soul conscious, connect with my eternal lover, and feel inside. And when I step into the day, I feel strong. I've got something to give. And in my own small way, I make the world a better place.